the session 3 of Jumpstart Your Business Recovery and Growth series. Today the session is about how to stand out in the crowd and build your customer base online. And we're going to just start with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the land that which we're meeting. We're hosting this webinar. We pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging, and recognise the oldest living culture in the world. So just a little bit about me. My name's Chesterman. I'm the General Manager and a Strategist in Marketing and Media at Circulate, a creative agency based in Sydney. We specialise in digital strategy, marketing and communications and digital development, and work with clients across a range of sectors, in particular tourism and travel, cultural organisations and institutions, government, not-for-profit and regional businesses. So just to put this session in context, this is part of a series of webinars that have been running throughout September. The previous weeks were about inspirational marketing and redefining your customer and pivoting your product. Today is about online marketing, and there are 2 other sessions coming up in September that if you haven't registered for before, you can still go ahead and do that. The next one coming up is getting prepped for a more flexible business future. And the last one is about how to set up your online shop and get you selling fast. So if you haven't registered for those, I really encourage you to register for them in those upcoming weeks. So let's just start with our agenda. We're going to focus today on how to build your customer base online. Like most things, while it looks really simple, once you get into the detail of marketing online, it can sometimes be harder than it looks to get traction, and you might have experienced that yourself. So today we're going to share some tips on some things that will help you to build awareness of your business and convert that growth in reach into sales and more customers. But first of all, we really want to think about who we're trying to reach and who to talk to. So we need to think about with who our customers are, and we need to think about the ecosystem of our digital spaces. And then we're going to get into some tactics for engaging them on social media, take a look at how to build your email database, and also options for paid online advertising. In terms of using participating in the webinar today, make sure that you ask any questions via your chat box, and we'll definitely get to them at the end of the session. So if you've got specific questions, put them in there, and I'll definitely try and answer as many of them as I can. You're in control of your screen, so you can either have your video on or and your mute on. And this is sort of a live home office environment. Okay. So let's start with the customer. That's probably the first thing we really need to think about in any digital marketing context. So thinking about your customer, who are they? What do they care about? What are their habits online? How do they engage? What channels do they use? What time of day are they looking at them? What kind of content do they like, and who do they engage with? So those are all the questions that you need to start with when you're thinking about your digital marketing. And then think about what you're doing. Is my website and my email newsletter and my social media channels set up really well to cater for them? So let's have a look at what's happening online in Australia. Australians are very active online. As you can see there, we've got 22 million internet users on any device. That's about 88% of the population. And the average daily time spent online is almost 6 hours now. So what we're seeing is that's increasing year on year. We're very active. So let's look at how do we reach them. There are obviously a lot of places that we can reach customers online, and often they intersect with each other, and you need to think of them as an ecosystem. So if we start with our own channels, which many of you may have, they're things like your website, your social media channels, your email newsletter, a blog that you might be writing for, and they're all set up to capture your customers once they've actually found you. But thinking about how we actually get them to those properties in the first place, we need to look at earned and paid properties as well. So earned are things like organic search referrals. So when people are searching for something online and your website comes up in a search result, referrals from other websites, PR, employee advocacy, so your employees posting about you on their blogs or social media, and also user-generated content. So that might be coming from your customers. And paid is the kind of the paid properties that you can pay to get customers to visit your owned properties. So they're things like display ads, social media ads, paid search ads, and influencer marketing. And what we find is that the greatest reach and return on investment usually comes from using a mix of these paid and owned channels to share messages. So the reality is we need to really think about them as an ecosystem rather than sort of single siloed entities. So first, let's take a look at our customer behaviour, because this is one of the most important things to think about when you're thinking about your customer, is how they're going to be finding you. And we've all seen this guy. He's the guy that's walking down the street looking at his phone. He's in a cafe looking at his phone. He's on a bus or a train looking at his phone. What we're continuing to see is a rise of mobile and smartphones across all demographics. So we need to think about that when we're thinking about making our content and making sure that it really works on a mobile screen. That's number one. Then we want to think about where are people spending their time. And this is sort of quite intuitive to most of us, but really the data really underlines this fact. The channels that most Australians are using are Facebook and Instagram. As you can see, that 89% of Australians use Facebook and 45% use Instagram. And there are also lots of people on LinkedIn and Twitter, but not nearly as much. So it's clear that Facebook and Instagram are the winners. We also need to think about when we might be reaching our customers on social media, when they might be looking at us. And we really know that most people are checking on their social feeds first thing in the morning and last thing at night. So they're at home and they're often in bed. I don't know if that's something that you can relate to, but I certainly can, because I definitely reach for my phone first thing and check my social last thing at night. And what are we looking at? Well, we're finding that most people, while people are looking at posts from their friends and family, and that's really important, they're also using social media to find out about their favourite brands, just to see if there are any new products or discounts or giveaways. And they're also using social media to dream and plan their next getaway. So dreaming about holidays or an escape for everyday life is a really common activity on social media. And that's really good for some of the businesses in the Hawkesbury region. The other thing that we need to be looking at is our existing customers on our own channels. And that we can find out quite a lot about them just using the analytics tools on the platforms that we're using. So here's the Facebook Insights page, which really can tell you who's coming to my page, where are they coming from, and this will give you a snapshot of the people that you're currently speaking to. And what you should be asking yourself is, are they the ones I'm trying to attract, or do I really need to change the content and messaging to appeal to the ones that I do want to attract? So if we look at this page in particular, you can see that we're really, it's primarily women in the sort of 45 to 54-year-old age group that we're speaking to. We're obviously capturing other age groups and genders, but those are our primary audience here. Similarly, it's the same for our website. So we can find out a lot about everything about our audience on Google Analytics in particular. You can find their age groups, you can find their gender, you can find audience interests, you can see where they are, and you can also see what devices they're looking at your website on. So it's really important information to know what's currently happening with your audiences and customers right now. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is tapping into the customer mindset when planning your marketing. And this is really important because we really need to think about what stage of the journey is my audience in and what am I trying to get them to do. So the questions are, am I trying to introduce them to my product and service from the outset? Do they know about who we are already? Am I trying to get them to consider a range of products? Am I trying to get them to visit my website or just engage with my content on social media to build my reach and engagement? So each action and each thing that you do in digital media really needs to think about what you want your customer to do. So last week, Kylie talked about creating personas for your customers, and this is a really great way of sort of considering someone or sort of type of person when you're thinking about your your marketing. So we're introduced to Sarah, who's 34, and she's a persona for a hairdressing salon. And we'll just use this as an example, just to have a quick look at what that looks like in a customer journey. So Sarah is someone who doesn't have a lot of time. She's 34, so she's probably a digital native. She's online a lot. She looks at online reviews. She wants to look great and get positive comments, and she's probably quite ambitious, and she also likes quality. She likes things that are Instagrammable, and she wants a high level of personal service. So all of those things are really kind of interesting insights into when I'm talking to her in my marketing and trying to capture her on that customer journey. So if we look at what a customer journey looks like, this is a very typical kind of marketing funnel. It's sort of saying, how do we want to reach people at different stages on the journey? So if we look at this one in terms of applying it to Sarah, who's the 34-year-old looking for a new hairdresser, when we're trying to think about her in the awareness stage, we can think about her as browsing the internet or social media and seeing content or advertising along the way. And she's probably open to seeing new brands while browsing. Then we want to think about, okay, what do we want to say to her at that point? So the messaging would be really about emphasizing the quality and the uniqueness of your hairdresser and the service. You probably wouldn't be talking about getting in and out fast, but rather that a visit to your salon is going to be a really relaxing part of her hectic day. You'd be promoting yourself as a high-level professional service, and you might be showing her the interior of your salon and making it look like a really luxury experience. And that's what she's going to be looking at in that sort of awareness and consideration phase. And when she's in that consideration phase, she's probably comparing what you offer from both a price and product and experience perspective with your competitors. So it's really good to know what they're doing as well. But what you want her to think is, oh, this looks very interesting and it's definitely appealing to me. When you want to get her to the conversion stage, that's when she's possibly booking or purchasing, you want to make that super easy. So when she gets to your website, you want her to be able to find your phone number really easily, and you want to make sure that she knows what time you're open. And those sorts of things are really important at that point. And then after the experience, you want her to actually review the product and experience, particularly if it's a positive one, because you can turn people into repeat customers and advocates at this stage. And what we'll find is that the places that people are looking are Google reviews, social media, TripAdvisor, Booking.com, and just word of mouth. Actually, they're the stage where you get them into the advocacy stage. So when you're talking to your customers, do think about this customer journey and what stage of the journey they might be on, and different customers will be different. But in terms of your marketing, you want to consider all of those stages of the customer journey. All right, let's get to our website. So it's very important that your website is really the hub of all your marketing activities. So it's the place that you send your customers for that conversion stage, booking, calling, contacting, and really getting into that, looking at your products in more detail. So we really need to make sure that it's ticking a lot of the items on our checklist. So our checklist is quite simple, but they're the sorts of things you need to ask yourself. So is your website user-friendly? Is it fresh and modern in your design and layout? Is it mobile friendly? Does it work on a mobile? Is super important. If you're looking at your site on a mobile and it breaks, then it's not really working for a majority of your potential customers. Does it have really clear call to actions, including a phone number, email, and contact forms that are really easy to find? Is your site search engine friendly? So will it turn up in a search result very high up? And that's what keyword rich and inspiring content can do for your search results. And have you linked to all your other online activities such as social media pages, media articles, or external websites? So they're just a couple of things that you should start with looking at your own website and analyze it from that point of view. And if you can fix those things, that's a really great place to start. The second thing is make sure that your presence on Google is as good as it can be. So Google, as you would know, is the world's largest search engine, and it's the places that people really go to research businesses and brands. It's the first result that they will often get. So you want to make sure that all the information on Google Business is up to date and correct. So everything from your address, your opening times, your phone number, your website, all that sort of thing. So make sure that that's up to date and that there's a good image there promoting your business. The second thing you need to think about there are your reviews. So reviews are hugely important and they're very valuable for both you and your customers. You can see this cafe's got a really high review with 4.5 stars and quite a few reviews, which is an indication to customers that it's worth digging a bit deeper. So one of the things you can do is ask people for reviews. It's a very simple thing to do. You can do it when people are actually in the store, but you can also do it through your newsletters and things like that. Make sure that you've verified your business so that your information is eligible to appear on maps and search and other Google services. And if you get a negative review, make sure that you acknowledge it. So a lot of people ignore these review areas, but it's super important to respond. So if someone writes something really nice about your business, then reply and say thank you. That's just great manners online. Make it very personable and authentic. But similarly, if someone writes something negative about your business, be upfront about it, be honest, and acknowledge if there were mistakes made, but maybe don't take responsibility or talk about how you've tried to address that issue. So that's a really important thing with negative reviews. Address them, don't leave them, and don't try and get rid of them, because that's not going to work for you. Possibly apologise if it's appropriate, and show that you're a real person by signing off with a name or initials. The other thing to think about is getting connected and listed on other people's websites. So it's a really effective way to get links back to your website and your business, and extra listings will increase your presence online and increase your reach and engagement. So there are a couple of examples that I've put on there, and it really depends on what kind of business you're in, but a couple of examples of the Destination New South Wales website has the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse, and it's a place where you can list all your products, whether you're a cruise line, and whether you're an accommodation or a restaurant, and they will actually profile your website, your listing on places like Visit New South Wales, etc. Other places are like TripAdvisor. Yelp is really good for a range of different businesses, Bing Places for Business, and Facebook Business Page. Have a look for directories that are relevant to your industry and make sure that you're on them, because the more links you have, the better your search results will be and the more visitors you'll be getting. Okay, let's look at social media engagement. When I say social media engagement, I'm just talking about posting without any paid advertising behind it and how you can really achieve that. So all social media platforms really operate on a basis where if your content gets good engagement, then it will be seen by more people. And this is called reach. Facebook's algorithm, for example, really prioritizes content that has good engagement and it hides content that don't. So if you're posting something and no one's pressing like or commenting or sharing or anything like that, what will happen is it will tend to not turn up in people's news feeds. And we've all had experiences where we've posted something like that. You posted something and then it's crickets, nothing happens. And the reasons for that can be, a few, but the first one is often, especially when you're getting started, it's because you just don't have a lot of followers on your page. And so your reach is quite limited to begin with. But the second thing is that your content is seen as broadcasting or advertising, and it's really not appealing to people to engage with it. So what I wanted to talk about is creating some content that often drives that engagement without payment. So things that are going to encourage people to comment and like and engage with your content. And that's what we're really trying to do here. So the first thing to do is know your platform roles and understand the purpose of each channel. And I've just done a quick snapshot of each of the kind of main ones, just to have a think about, because You don't want to just post the same content across every platform. You can share content across some, so Facebook and Instagram, all of them actually, you can use similar images and videos, but the way that you craft the copy and what you're asking people to do is different. So if we look at Facebook, for example, it's really great for engagement, sharing, and driving website traffic. So anything that requires a click or something to do on the platform, it's a really great place to do it. Instagram is really a visual storytelling platform. And so what it's great for is great imagery and great videos. And that's what really builds a brand awareness and engagement. So it should be about sort of promoting feel-good stories, seasonal and image-rich content, rather than sort of factual or anything that requires a linking out. LinkedIn's role is really about business-to-business communication. So it's quite a different tool. It's not really as good for reaching customers and consumers, but what it is really great for is tapping into broader sectors and also thought leadership pieces. It's also really good for recruitment if you're looking for staff. Twitter is a different platform. It's really open. It's great for communicating to a broad audience and leveraging content that will build relationship and awareness. But I would say that it's probably less used by brands and businesses for promoting services in Australia than other platforms. All right, so if you're going to have a social media channel, you really need to post consistently. So what we recommend is sort of 3 to 4 times a week, posting different content and making sure that you're answering and responding to any and all comments on your page. So to do that, you really need to plan your content, and we use a content calendar that just sort of breaks it up into a month and go, okay, if we're going to post 3 times a week, we're going to post on these days with this type of content. And that's just one way to get organized with your content types. But you also need to think about what you're actually going to post and making sure that it's a good mix of types of content. So I've listed a couple here. So things like news, which could be new announcements, new products, sort of seasonal events. Evergreen content can be things like FAQs or testimonials that could really just be posted at any time, and so you can kind of build up a bank of those to plan in your content calendar. Offers and promotions are basically as they sound. They're promoting anything that you know, a sale or an incentive or a discount or anything like that, and we do know that those sorts of things are very popular on social media. Brand content is usually about very sort of visual and design posts that really display your brand identity to potential customers. So it's about sort of building that story around who you are and what you offer. UGC is user-generated content, and this is content that's created by community members, and it can be used by you. So if they tag you in a post, you can reuse that content or repost that content just to show that people are engaging with your brand. You can also look for user-generated content on places like Instagram and then ask people if they're happy for you to use that content. So that's a great way of finding content that you don't actually have to create yourself. Call to actions are posts that really encourage engagements and click-through. So they're things like asking people to visit your website or subscribe to your newsletter, things like that, or book online. So those are all the different types of content that you can post, and there are also lots of content formats which we're going to have a quick look at now. So I'll just run through a couple. So the first thing is, as you can see from these 2 different examples, using strong imagery is one way to cut through on social media, because as we know, there is a lot of content that is being published every single day. So to really cut through, you really need to try and find as strong imagery and video content as possible. Some tips for what to include people that your ideal customers can relate to. That's, you know, people smiling, blue skies, native wildlife, beautiful scenery, and food and wine. So those sorts of things really work on social media. People like to see things that they can relate to and that they aspire to. Showcasing the location and the destination of your business is really important. So setting the scene, it really helps to build a picture for your customer of who you are and where you are and what that experience is going to look like. And if you're going to use people in your posts, so if you look at the Lowe Family Wine Company, you can see some customers or an interaction in the winery. Make sure it looks natural and not staged, because if it looks staged, it's just not going to be looking authentic. So make sure that it's as natural as possible. Also make sure that you make your images lively. So don't show empty restaurants, hotels and offices. I know that the Temple Farmhouse one that I'm showing shows empty baths, but you can sort of see that it's set up for someone just to step into it. So it feels like it could be you, and that's a really powerful post. And think about composition and lighting. So the things that do work well are photos that have really good lighting. And also composition that shows a range. So in the Lowe Family Wine Company one, you can see that there's a real range of sort of long shots and close-up and detail photos. And that just provides a variety, and it makes it a much more interesting feed to look at. One thing to notice that on Facebook in particular, if you're going to post a video, you should really assume that people might be looking at it with the sound off. So if the sound is important at all, you might want to think about including captions. Otherwise, you can just, people will be watching it, and if the sound's not super important, that's okay. So we talked about user-generated content a little bit, but it's definitely true that people trust other people before they trust brands. And that's why user-generated content is a really great way to engage followers and build up your brand's reputation. So what is user-generated content? It's any content. It could be text, videos, images, reviews created by other people rather than brands. So I've put a couple of examples in there. I've just done a quick search on Instagram of Hawkesbury, New South Wales, and you can see there's a whole bank of posts of videos and images that have been posted with that hashtag. And so you can start to sort of look through there and see if there's content that is relevant to your business that you might want to ask that person who's posted if you can use. In that Crystal Creek Rainforest Retreat post, you can see that one of their guests has posted a beautiful shot of the room and has shared it with them. And so they've used it in that post and acknowledged her, which is a really nice way of showing that you're profiling your customers. And in the Aussie Hair example, that's their Instagram stories where people have shared posts about their products, and they've referenced them in their Instagram story and acknowledged those posts as well. Some other examples are on Google, actually, where people have posted photos. The cow on the moon, that photo is from a customer, and that's turning up on their Google page. In the Black Milk clothing one, they actually feature their customers in wearing their clothing as a way to promote. So that's another way that you can get user-generated content on your feeds. So let's think about the copy. Images are the kind of main thing, but the copy to accompany it is really important. And what we find works really well in terms of getting engagement, in terms of likes and comments in particular, are using open-ended questions. So the Blundstone example is a great one. 5 decades of the originals, how do you wear yours? And you've got lots of likes, hundreds of likes, and lots of people replying to that comment. So that's a really great way of getting people to engage on a very simple image post. Similarly, using emojis is a very effective way to make your copy stand out. So you can see some examples there. I'm not suggesting you use 1 million emojis, but very simple emojis really helps to break up your copy and to sort of give a very clear picture of what you're talking about, and it definitely works really well. Other things to think about are just, selling your experience, not just the product. So talk about the benefits and how your customer will feel. Try to appeal to their emotions. And also just imagine, one of the things that I like to do is imagine that you're talking to your friends and family, or you're talking to your customers face to face. You really want to use a very conversational tone Don't use a sort of marketing or sort of more formal language. It's much better to remember that your post will probably arrive in a feed of other posts from friends and families, and you don't want it to stand out too much. Q&A stickers are really effective on Instagram. So this is a really great way to engage your followers and actually find out a little bit more about them at the same time. So this is a really, really simple example that I thought was worth sharing. Very simple question, what's your favourite tea? And then hundreds of responses from customers that then can be turned into content itself. So in this example, she's thanked the person for posting and posted their reply as well. And it's a really great way to create new content as well. Competitions to build followers works really well, and that's particularly on Instagram. So this is where you can encourage people to like an Instagram feed and tag friends to enter. So you can see the Dovecote one in particular is to win a stay, and in this example they've teamed up with another business, the local project, to and asking people in a very simple way to follow both of their Instagram feeds and to tag 3 friends. So this is a really effective way to build up your followers, which is one of the main things you need to do to try and build that reach in the first place. It's important to notice that on Facebook, you can't do tag to or share to win competitions. They will deprioritize those posts. So just remember that it's different on Facebook. Their main objective is to prioritize engagement. So you can do things like this post or comment on this post or vote by liking message as a way to enter a competition. But those sort of competitions can build a lot of likes. And you can see the Dovecote one, which is still running. I think it's got over 6,000 likes, which is, and probably if you multiply that by 3, a lot of mentions. One of the things that people really love online is feeling smart. And I don't know if that relates to you, but I definitely relate to that. So things like trivia, skill testing questions, puzzles, quizzes, anything that just sort of taps you out of your everyday and makes the sort of complicated world feel coherent for a second is really effective. And so what we find with these sorts of posts is that puzzles and quizzes get a lot of comments, and so that's one very simple way to get posts that will get great engagement and reach. Taps to reveals are another simple way to get people to engage. These kind of question and reveals can be a simple way to get people to engage. So you can do it in lots of different ways. In this example, it's just really getting people to think about what uses the most power in their home. And this brand is a renewable energy company. But other examples can be things like if you're a restaurant and you've got a new dish on the menu, you could just show the ingredients, for example, and get people to tap and reveal what the final dish is. So it's great to be really, really simple about it, but it's a really good way of getting people to engage. Hashtags. So hashtags are sort of a label for a content, and I'm sure you've come across them and seen them on social media. In this example, you can see lots of different hashtags on this one post. What it does is it makes it really easy for other people to find content that's related to your post. And they can be really, particularly on Instagram and LinkedIn, they play a really important role in turning your followers into a much larger follower base. So it just means it allows people to find your content in a search on a hashtag. So a couple of things to remember when using hashtags is that when you're planning your content, don't just copy the same hashtags in each post, because each post will have sort of different content and different things that you could tap into. So remember, for example, that there are location hashtags, there's seasonal hashtags, there's content specific hashtags. So think about each post and think about what's relevant and where you want your content to turn up. And that often requires doing some research. Have a look at what's out there and see whether your post and your content will fit in with that hashtag. Avoid gimmicky hashtags or things that you've just made up. Those don't tend to work so well. What you really want to do is get yourself into a conversation. So research the ones where there are lots of people and there are lots of posts that are relevant. People often ask how many hashtags to add, and it really depends on the platform. But on Instagram, the maximum number is roughly around 30. And as I said, make them sure that they're super relevant. And the other thing to note is to add hashtags in your comments rather than the post itself. And the reason for that is that, you know, on Instagram, it's much easier to read a post and the copy of a post without a million hashtags right afterwards. So we always put our hashtags in the first comment rather than the post itself. I've put a couple of hashtags for you to think about using regularly. The I Love Sydney and Love New South Wales ones are the ones that Destination New South Wales use. And they will always be looking in those hashtag fields to find content to re-promote on their social media channels. And they really encourage people to use those hashtags for that reason. Community management. So community management is really what happens after and beyond your social media publishing. So once you post something, it's really what brings your feed and your brand to life. So think about community management as something that you need to do daily or weekly at the very least, because what it allows you to do is manage customer complaints. It turns customers into loyal fans. It can win influencers and prospective clients and customers, and it gives you an opportunity to talk to other organisations and entities in your industry. You can also get really valuable and raw feedback that you can then feed back into your business and communications strategy. And as you can see from some of the examples, when brands or businesses do this really well, it can be an amazing way of marketing. So without having to do another post, you can increase the reach of your business a lot. So the example of the Wendy's one, which is, yo Wendy's, how many retweets for a year of free chicken nuggets? And they've responded with 18 million. And then that person starts to kind of leverage their network to try and build the opportunity to get those free nuggets. Similarly, if something goes wrong and someone complains about it online, it's really important to respond to that. So same as with on Google reviews, don't just leave it, respond, and try and respond in a way that's going to sort of de-escalate that complainer. So some examples are that, you know, IKEA sent out emails to multiple emails. I think it was something like, 10 emails to the same customers. And so the customers started pushing back on social media, and they really responded very quickly on that. And they sort of turned it into a bit of a joke. So they started talking about the office cat being in charge of push and go on the EDMs. And, when the customers started joking about it, they joked about it too. And that really sort of changes sort of a complaint into a better interaction. And similarly, if, someone's complaining about ordering something and they haven't received it, then you can deal with it really quickly. And if they still start complaining, you can try and take them offline and deal with it so it's not all over your social media. So let's move on to growing your email database, because what we know about emails is that they're very important for staying top of mind with your customers. It's really a critical way to reach them. As you know, the web is littered with businesses that sell similar products or services to you, so you really need to connect with your customers constantly. And as you can see from that stat, the average Aussie business saw a $22.78 return on investment for every dollar spent on email. So it can be a very effective way of reaching people. So whether it's just weekly updates on new products that are coming into a store, or a newsletter letting you know your customers know about a new blog post, keeping them engaged is really critical. And what we see is that nearly a third of purchases from repeat customers are often initiated with an email. So it's something that it's really important to keep in mind. A couple of best practices just that are worth noting. Remember that some days are better for sending than others, and you can actually do a search on your industry, because different industries are slightly different. But what we do find is that Tuesday is a particularly good day. I often find sending an email before 9 o'clock is a good way to get people to open the emails, because they come to work and it's sitting there ready to go, or while they're commuting. And the worst day for open rates is Saturday. So we tend to avoid weekends for sending emails. So a couple of ways that you can grow your email database. Studies show that in-store and face-to-face events are really effective for email acquisition. I'm sure you've experienced this, and I certainly have myself, going into a store and people asking for my email address when at point of sale. So that's something you could think about, training your staff to ask for that information from customers, and making sure to explain what's in it for them. So it could be even just sort of so that they can find out about sales or discounts and things like that. But encouraging people to give you their email at point of sale is probably the easiest way. Other ways that you can do it are promoting your newsletter on social media. So things like those examples that I've included are just posts asking people to subscribe to a newsletter. On our Facebook page, we actually make our link to a sign up for our newsletter, because that's what we want people to do. So you can look at sort of using social media to promote that. Running competitions is another way. This example from the Entertainment Quarter is the way to win the competition to win dinner at Fratelli Fresh is to sign up to the newsletter. So that's one way of doing it. Similarly, pop-ups on your website is a really effective way to do it. In the example here, we've got an added incentive of getting a discount on your first purchase, and that's pretty common. So a couple of tips for email marketing success. I'm just going to run through these quite quickly, but make sure that you've got a responsive EDM template. And basically what that means is make sure that your email newsletter is optimized for mobile. Personalize wherever possible. Choose fonts that are clear and easy to read. If it's hard to read, people aren't going to keep going, so they're going to click out very quickly. Make sure that the most important call to action or the valuable offer is at the top of the email newsletter, because again, if people don't see something that's in there for them, they won't keep reading. And the subject line is quite important, but be careful not to use too many sort of exclamation marks, because often those things can go into spam folders. Avoid hyperlinks. Use buttons and graphics if possible, because that seems to work better for actually getting people to click on things. So if you want them to get them through to your website, using buttons works well. In some email systems, you can segment your database so you can get more personalized. So if you want to segment again around sort of gender or location or interest, you can do it that way. One tip is if you're finding that your open rate is really low, you can go back into your system for a couple, 2 days after sending an email, and find the ones you haven't opened at all, and you can resend with a new email subject. So that's one way to get your emails to go a bit further. Send it at optimal times, as I mentioned before, and always send a test to yourself before sending to your subscribers. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about paid advertising. So all the things that I've been talking about there are really what we call organic, so posting and digital marketing that hasn't got any paid advertising behind it. So typically paid media involves third-party platforms and targets specific consumer segments, and it can allow you to get really detailed in who you're targeting, which is really good for businesses who are just getting started and interested in building a customer base. So let's look at Facebook advertising, because Facebook advertising, we have found, is probably one of the easiest and most effective ways to spend your advertising dollars. It has probably what's called the lowest cost per conversion, which means that when you set your objectives on Facebook advertising, it has the lowest cost to actually get a customer to do something. It also has an enormous active monthly following and users. So there's a lot of time that people are spending on that platform for your brand to be seen, which is really important. And you can also target very specifically your audience. So target what you want, where you want, and who you want. So with their global audience, they've got very, very sophisticated tools to allow you to do that. And it also allows you to run tests at a very low cost to really test out how you're going to, what's going to work best for your advertising. And you can also get a sense of the engagement really quickly. As soon as you put an ad live, you can sort of see what people are doing, and you can optimize to make sure that it works as well as you can. There's lots of different advertising options depending on your objective and desired results. So you can do everything from awareness, which is really about increasing your reach on Facebook and getting in front of as many people as possible. Consideration is really about encouraging interactions on your page and making sure that your messages are getting through. So trying to get people to click on links to your website and those sorts of things. And conversions are really about getting people to do things like sign up or call. So search engine marketing is another option, which is it's very effective, because what it does is it offers you the opportunity to put your ads in front of customers who are ready to buy. So what we're seeing there is that search engine marketing will allow your business to go up in the rankings of a search result. So as you can see with that example, we've got wedding open days, and we've got the ad responding to that will appear with up to 4 ads after that paid search result. So it's just one really great way to get your search results right up there. The way that Google Ads work is really about bidding on keywords. So it's really about making sure that you've got keywords in your website that are in line with what people are searching for. But it is a very effective way of reaching people who are ready to buy. Influencer marketing is another way that you can reach audiences by tapping into somebody else's audience. And you may have seen this before, but it's a sort of a collaboration with a person who has clout on a certain subject. That could be anything from food, travel, architecture, interior design, fashion, or books. And they're really passionate about what they're writing about. And what we find is that it can be really effective in reaching new and targeted markets through that influencer's audience. And it doesn't have to be super expensive too. What we find is that the more niche influencers can really connect with real people in a way that can be effective. And it also can be quite a cheap way of getting really high quality content for your own feed. What I've put there in there are the kind of different types of influencers that you can reach. So you've got the low end influencers, are anyone who've got between 1,000 and 5,000 followers. The mid-range is sort of 5,000 to 20,000, and high-end 20,000 followers. And what you'll find is that their prices will increase as their follower numbers go up. The way to find them is to hunt for influencers using hashtags, or even just do a quick Google search, or you can even use a dedicated influencer marketing platforms, and there are quite a few out there. So the biggest question, I guess, that probably all of you would be asking is, how much should I be spending on my advertising? And the problem with that is it really does depend. It depends what your objectives are and what your budget is. But the good news is that you really can start advertising on Facebook for as little as $1 a day. The reality is that the more you spend, the greater the reach. But to get started, you can do some very simple things like boosting posts or running page-like campaigns. And they're very simple ways of reaching more people. And you can actually, in the process of that, very simply just decide which types of audiences you want to reach. One thing to think about is that if you look at the posts that you're posting already that are doing really well, it's a really good idea to boost those ones, because if they're doing really well without any money behind them, they're going to do really well with more with money behind them. So The things that do well in advertising is still content that will resonate with people. So if you've got a post that's going great guns, put some money behind it and see what happens. If you want to start trying other advertising and you've decided on your objectives, Facebook can really help you calculate your estimated reach and results based on your targeting and budget. So you can have a play around with that and sort of see what you can get for your money. With Google Ads, instead of having set costs, AdWords really works more like an auction marketplace. So really, it depends on your industry as to how much you're going to have to spend. If you've got very specific, if you've got a very kind of niche business, it's going to be a lot less than something that's quite high density. So that's just a little bit on paid advertising. We're kind of running out of time. So what I might do is share some of these tools and resources. Here are a couple that I've put together that are just a couple of links that might help you in the first place. The first being the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse that I mentioned before. It's on the Destination New South Wales website. Other things that you should be looking at is just testing whether your website's mobile friendly, having a look at this free SEO tool, which will give you some results on your own website and how it's currently performing. There's a HubSpot ads calculator, which will help you just think a little bit more about how much you should be spending and what kind of results you should be looking at. Canva is a really great online tool that is really simple for creating design posts or any sort of design for any of your marketing needs. There's a couple of references there for how to advertise on Facebook and set up some Google AdWords and a website for finding influencers. So have a look at those and they could be some resources to help you go forward. So now it's time for questions. We've got probably about 5 minutes, I think, 5 or 6 minutes. So let me know if you've got questions that you'd like me to answer. Okay, I've got one from Kylie here. She's asking about how you change your Google information. If you Google Business, it will give you the option to go in and change your Google information. Any other questions? If there were, okay, another one from Kylie. If there was one thing that a business should do, what would it be? I would say, I would actually think about your Google business, because I think that's probably the one place that people will find you is through a search result. And particularly, you know, the way that Google works is that it's very location based. So if people are in your region and in your street and they're looking for a service or a place to eat or a place to stay, one of the most effective things is making sure that you turn up in that search when they're looking for it. So Google talks a lot about moments, and they're really thinking about that user journey. When are people searching and what do they want to find? And the best, if you've got your information up to date and make it really easy for people there, plus a website that's mobile friendly, because remember, if I'm in the street, I'm on my mobile and I wanted to have a look at your website, it needs to work for me. So really that sort of connection between sort of the Google and Google search and your website is vitally important. Any other questions? I'm just going to stop presenting now so I can see if anyone's, yeah. Google mobile friendly. Any other questions, anyone? I can't see anyone except for Janine. Hi, Janine. Has anyone got any other questions about specific to their business? No. Okay. Well, look, thank you for joining today's session. It's been really great to talk to you, and please sign up for the next session. There's 2 more to come, so make sure that you've signed up for them. They are the getting prepared for a more flexible business future, and how to get an online shop up and getting new selling fast. So they're really, really useful, very practical sessions that will help to jumpstart your business. Thank you, everybody. See you later.